Welcome to Iron Sights. This podcast candidly seeks to create opportunities and deliver impact by sharing the experiences and wisdom of successful entrepreneurs and thought leaders who unapologetically aim to win in health, fitness, business, and life. I'm your host, Scott Howell. Welcome to Old School Meets New School. Tradition meets innovation, and imperfection meets excellence. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. I want to thank you first and foremost for coming down and hanging out with me today and coming to our studio. I appreciate it. What do you think, man?
It's better than mine, dude. I have a studio envy right now.
I don't know if it's better.
Oh, it is way better, man. Obviously, I don't know if that's Cece over there who's got the eye or what, but watching the four of us, our business, our studio looks like a boys' college dorm room. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of how we've kind of put things together. Like, we've always said, we need a woman's touch so bad in here. So terrible.
Well, it's interesting. That's kind of the opposite end I wanted to, or maybe the same direction I wanted to go here. I have some very influential and special dudes in my life, right? That I surround myself with. But the ratio of men to women and what I'm surrounded by on a daily basis is very skewed. It's all chicks, dude.
Are you really?
So I needed
So that's what it's
so I needed dude, I need something that's mine. Can I just have?
This is your man cave.
Yeah, this is my semi-man cave. This is about as best I could come up with. If I was going to have my own little living room or den, this is kind of what it would look like. So.
No, I absolutely love it. What's the picture over here? Who is this?
So that's my pops in the glasses there with the guns, and then that's me around his neck and my little brother. That's circa 1985. There.
Wow! So he was serious into lifting too.
So the story behind that is dad was always athletic. Did some time in the military. He was into gymnastics and martial arts, and then when he got out, he started lifting the weights. And he was lifting weights down in Southern California and around the guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger and without dropping all the names. And then as he was doing that, he was going to college. He was using his GI Bill to earn his education, and he needed to make some money. He was going to night school, and he started working for Jack LaLanne. I literally have pictures of him with the Jack LaLanne in his clubs and whatever, wearing slacks with a shirt and a tie and even like a lab coat. That's what they had to wear back in the day. So my dad was the one that really introduced me to weight training and lifting, and my first weight set was.
So I'm assuming then you have a pretty incredible relationship with him.
He was awesome. He was just here actually just a few minutes ago. He
I would have loved to meet him. No way.
He just rolled through. Yeah. Well, I mean, the relationship with my parents is incredible. I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world that way. Just blessed. Still have both my parents. They're still married after more than 50 years. And my little brother there. We're very close. We all live sort of close to one another, and they got grandbabies now, and and all that stuff.
So cool.
Yeah. So again, just sort of the boys' room. So
yeah. Cool. No, that's awesome. And I love hearing stories like that. I mean, I didn't grow up with my dad, right? So seeing somebody who had like a father figure like that, like it always like plays in my head, like, man, what would that have been like if my dad had like that kind of influence on me? Would I be in a displace, or is it because I didn't have that I'm in this place? I always wonder that.
Yeah, well, you're dad now, so now you get to experience that on a different end.
That's right.
And I want to talk about that a little bit. But, we were just kind of, before we got started here, we were talking a little bit about Mind Pump and all the things that have happened. Man, I mean, the Mind Pump story is kind of incredible, and I'll add my own kind of knowledge of it, and hopefully you can, fill the gaps in with some of the details. But you and the crew have achieved so much at this point in the game. And what's it been, about 5 years?
We're actually 6 now, yeah.
Okay, 6 years, over 1,500 episodes, right? Over, 1 million listens every month.
Yeah.
It's like 100 countries, kind of tuning in on a regular basis. Did you guys ever think that it would get to kind of where it is?
That's actually, the funny part about it is 100%.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah. There's definitely a level of narcissism between the four of us for sure. But what I've learned, okay, so we saw a therapist about this, by the way. So if you go far enough back in Mind Pump, we actually had a psychologist come on the show and do a live evaluation on all of us. This is hella early, right? And we were all very different in different ways, and it showed the different strengths and weaknesses. The one common thing that we all had a very high level of narcissism. and right away you're like, oh great, this is terrible, right? Like this is not a good thing. She's like, no, absolutely. There's different types of narcissism, and she says, if you're going to do something great and you're going to be putting yourself out there, you need to have a level of that. And so there's definitely a common theme between the four guys. We were very confident in what we were doing, probably to a fault, right? Like I don't think we realized how difficult it would be. I think we saw an opportunity, and we had so much confidence in ourselves as individuals, and then we thought to ourselves, like, God, the fact that I've got 3 other guys that think the same way, like, oh, we got this shit, you know? So, and we were just kind of fearless with our approach, and we all had the same type of attitude of, yeah, we're gonna fail. Yeah, we're not going to be great right away. Like that's part of the process and how we learned anything else. And so, we have these crazy. I mean, we don't think we're anywhere there. Like we still think we have a long ways to go.
I love that, and I think that the important thing for maybe some of the audience that's listening that doesn't really know is it's not just about the podcast. I mean, there's a lot going on there, behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. Tell me a little bit about like, where did the MAPS programming kind of fit into the scene, and then the whole YouTube channel, which is like this monster out there that maybe some people don't even know about. Was that all part of the plan? Did that just kind of happen?
So your guys actually caught some really probably good content. So I don't know how this is all going to fit together and everything, but they asked some really good questions related to like the birth of all this, like how did it happen, right? So, over 6 years, so like 8 years ago, I was already building towards something like this. Like I had no idea it was going to be Mind Pump. Like I can't say that I knew that, but I did have the intention of building a social media business. And what led me to that was, years ago. So let's go back like 8-9 years, plus. Social media, as far as Facebook and Twitter, is on the scene. YouTube's on the scene by the time Instagram's about to come on the scene, I think around there. I'm hearing rumors of people that are making millions of dollars on social media. Up until that point, I actually used to make fun of people that were on social media. Like I didn't have any of that stuff. I used to say like, I have friends in real life. I don't need virtual friends. Like that was like my thing. That's why someone said, hey, why are you not on Facebook? I'm like, I have real friends. Why do I need virtual friends, right? So totally what I used to say. And totally ignorant, right? Because I didn't know what was going on yet. And then I meet this kid, and I'm playing basketball with him. You've met Taylor before. So Taylor was the catalyst to a lot of this as far as like me going in this direction. We were playing basketball in a men's league, and he's on my team. And I noticed that he's in there. And mind you, little backstory on me, I've had some success in other businesses. I started up 2 of the first medical marijuana companies. So I had some money stacked away. I had freedom as far as my timing. And I was like at a point in my life where I didn't like marijuana. I wanted to get back into fitness. Fitness was my passion, what I love to do. But I had this flexibility because I didn't have to chase the dollar for the first time in my life. And I love basketball. So I'm playing ball with this guy. And I noticed, and he's like 24 years old, I think, at this time. And he's like in the gym at like 11, 3 on a Monday, Wednesday. I'm like, and he's got nice sneakers. He drives this nice car. And I know he goes to church and he's a good kid. So I know he's not a drug dealer, right? So I'm like, dude, what do you do? And he's like, oh, I have a Facebook e-commerce business. And I'm like, okay, tell me more. And I took him to sushi that day. I was like, what's your favorite place to eat? I love sushi. Okay, I'm going to take you to sushi. You're going to sit down and tell me all this shit. Because up until that point, I had heard about this stuff, but I never met anybody. So I'm still calling bullshit right now. I'm still like, whatever. I haven't met somebody who actually built something like that's tangible, right? So he tells me, like, we go have lunch, and he kind of lays it all out. And he has this like really cool like sneaker business, e-commerce business that he built. He's only had, I think, about 20,000 followers on Facebook, so not a massive following, but had built himself a 6-figure business. He wasn't crushing, but he was able to work out.
Making good dough.
Yeah, he was making good money. He had autonomy. He was able to like come and go as he pleased, right? He had like an assistant working for him. And it was at that very moment, that night, I went home and I turned on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, like literally started an account. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use these mediums to now build them up to work my way back into the fitness industry. Now, simultaneously, I was also building an app with Justin. So my other co-host, Justin, and I, we go way back. He used to work for me years ago at 24 Hour Fitness. And I, again, back to my having capital, I was able to fund it, and he was the tech guy. So the kind of the goal was this: okay, Justin, here's some money. And the idea, so the audience that cares about this stuff, because it didn't ever go anywhere, we were gamifying fitness. So we were building this app. I dumped about $70,000 into building this app, which was an experience in itself and a whole nother topic. So him and I are building that. I trust Justin to be the tech guy to go and, handle all the engineers and build this thing out, right? And my job was to build the audience that we would sell it to. And that's where I get this idea of like, okay, I'm going to use YouTube, I'm going to use Facebook, I'm going to use these social media platforms to get eyes on me, become an authority in the space, and then we'll have this app that we're going to sell to them. So I start trying to figure this out. I don't know what I'm doing at the beginning. Like, I'm watching the landscape and seeing what everybody else is doing.
Right. This is early on too. Like with Instagram. Instagram is just kind of starting.
Yes.
Right? It had only been Facebook at this point.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. So I did technically start Facebook and YouTube first. In fact, I don't think I've ever even released all of them. I was vlogging like on YouTube, and I was so embarrassed of myself. Like, I didn't like the way I communicated the camera. It was not me, and I'm like, this is terrible. Probably would be great now, like looking back, so we could laugh at it or whatever. But I was creating that. I had the Facebook, and I was doing Instagram, and I was just kind of like throwing spaghetti on the wall. Like, what do these people want to see? I'm posting pictures of my shoes, my car. I'm like talking about fitness. Well, I'm watching like all the fitness people that are like really big, like these kids that are in their 20s that have millions of followers, and I'm reading their content. And this is where I start to really see the opportunity. I'm like, oh, wow, like the information that they're providing.
It's garbage, right?
Yeah, it's, and that's not to I don't want to just disrespect everybody out there, because there's lots of people out there that probably put out good content. But the majority of them were putting out content and information probably where I was when I was 23, 24. Mm-hmm. So
they think they're doing it
right. So that's why
they really believe they're doing it right.
I want to defend them a little bit, because I think that at that point in your career, when you're still you're just barely getting your feet wet,
cutting your teeth.
Yeah, you're really learning like the right information to communicate to these people. Now, I had already had 15 years in the trenches with clients, and I already learned those were the wrong answers, and I already learned like what you should be telling these people and the right message to communicate. So this is where I saw my opportunity. Like, okay, I'm going to come out very counter what everybody else is. Well, that wasn't quite enough, because at that point I still only have like 100 people paying attention to me, and I'm trying to compete with millions, and the algorithm works where it's
how it works. Yeah.
Right. So they're no to see me. So I use the idea that I'm in some of the worst shape. So I came off the marijuana business. I went up to 20% body fat. So for me as a trainer, I'd never seen that before. So I'm technically the worst shape of my life. I'm also 30 years old, so I'm not a young kid anymore. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to show my transformation. I'm going to document it. So that's what's going to gain my authority. Like when these people see that I know what I'm talking about, and that it's counter information from everybody else, this is
powerful.
Right. And that's really what started to gain the momentum. So this is really before Mind Pump exists. I start getting this traction. I get like 15, 20,000 followers. Simultaneously, while Justin's doing the app thing, I'm losing money on that.
You're bleeding.
Yeah, I am. I'm like, he's like, hey, I need another $5,000. I'm like, okay. I'm like, bro, when are we gonna see something, right? Like, literally, it was like that. It was the worst experience ever. So he's doing that. Bleeding us dry of the capital. And then I meet Sal on Facebook. And I knew of Sal. We knew of each other from 24 Hour Fitness because, like you, we were top performers in the company. And so, even though we never met, you knew the names. Yeah, you know the names because you
always know. Yeah, it's always the competition.
Right. So you see everybody in these rankings. So we recognize each other's names, and we had mutual friends. And our mutual friends kept saying, you guys got to meet. Well, Sal messages me, and we start talking. And the irony is that we actually connect about marijuana. So I have the Cannabis Club experience where I go through like this, and I like Sal, we're very similar. When we get into something, we go really deep, right? So I knew nothing about cannabis before. So I go down to Barnes & Noble, buy a bunch of books, like start reading like crazy. And that back then was very taboo for fitness.
Totally, yeah.
Nobody's talking about marijuana in the fitness.
It's taboo period at that point. Yeah.
Right. So it's not a popular thing to be talking about. And I meet this other fitness nerd guy who I right away respect his intelligence with fitness and his level of intelligence when it comes to marijuana. And so we like hit it off. It's like, dude, I'd never met anybody else like this. And so we're having conversation about marijuana first. And then he goes, hey, I want you to take a look at this, program that I'm building, a digital program I'm building online. My partner, Doug, and I are thinking about, getting into the e-commerce business and starting to sell digital programs. So he sends it over to me, and I'm like, oh my God, like the messaging is just right. It's and it's counter to what everybody else is talking about. I'm like, we got to meet. I said, I want to bring my buddy Justin, and let's all get together and just talk and just see what comes of it.
Yeah, what happens.
And we all come to my house, and it was absolute chemistry right out the gates. The conversation was fire, just guys going back and forth. And even though we were all really different, like there's not a lot we have in common other than like the fitness experience. We all really hit it off and really like each other. And Katrina afterwards was like, oh my God, that conversation was amazing. And Doug's like, we should put this on a podcast. And I know what podcasting is because I'm aware of the medium's growth.
But this is still very early on in podcasting.
Yeah. It's like on year 5 or 6 or so, and it's like really just starting to get popular. And I had seen on CNN a couple times actually, like they were starting to talk about it on the news, like, oh, this new medium podcasting, it's grown 300% over the last couple of years. And so I had listened to like a political podcast maybe a couple of years ago before that my buddy had introduced me to. So I was a little bit familiar, right? But I had no idea the level that it would take to start one. And Doug's like, oh yeah, I have all the gear. Let's just do it. And we're like, oh shit, okay. So we all get in the next Saturday and we just start ripping content, and we had such a fun time doing it, and we're so excited about like the potential of what this is, especially when we started like researching the competitors. We're like, oh wow, there's nothing out here that is being presented like this. This will be fun. And Sal and Doug already had MAPS Anabolic, so they already had a product to sell. But I also tell people this when I tell this story, that I think this is one of the most important parts of this story was we had something to sell on day one when we had one listener. Right now. Mm-hmm. But we did not release that well over a year.
So, you spent time building the audience and earning trust.
Over 100 episodes, So we spent over a year and a half building value in the audience. And we all made this commitment that, listen, we are not going to sell anything until we believe that we are providing so much value that people will just give us money for anything. And that was literally the catalyst that caused us to turn on the monetization, because we all came in the studio one day, a year and a half later, and we're like, dude, I've got 3 DMs. This person, Justin, had an email. People are trying to like donate money to us. They feel like we've already impacted their life so much. Mm-hmm. And that was when we knew we had a business. At that moment, we go, okay, we have something. And then it was on.
So that's what inspired the whole thing. And then that was the catalyst. I mean, that's when you knew we're on to something here. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it starts to grow. And then 100 episodes turns into 200 episodes and starts getting...
Yeah, it started to get... and, it was slow, right? It was not... It wasn't like this, like overnight, like what they say, like 10 years of working hard and then overnight success, right? Like
then you're an overnight success.
Right. Yeah. I mean, first of all, you got 3 guys that have 2 decades of training clients.
Right.
So the knowledge and experience, and really even more than the knowledge and experience, the conversation, the ability to communicate the same idea 1,000 different ways was our secret weapon. Was like, and still this day, we've done 1,500 episodes, but honestly, I look back and I go like 900 of them are the same.
Yeah. Well, let's actually talk about that a little bit too, because I was hearing about you guys kind of right off the bat. There was a time where you were just up the street from our original studio, and I was kind of hearing from people on the street that, hey, these guys are out there doing stuff, and I was just being introduced to Instagram and Facebook. We didn't even have any social media till only a few years ago, believe it or not. So I'm like, who's this guy Adam, and what's this thing Mind Pump, and started listening. So I guess the point is when I started listening, I'm going to be honest, when I got on there, I go, this shit's a little rough. Like, these guys are a little rough around the edges. I mean, to say the least, if we could say it, there's a lot of dick and fart jokes. It sounded like a bunch of, a bunch of bros sitting around just kind of there was content there, but there was a lot of other stuff, F-bombs being dropped and things like that. It was kind of like a little bit of shock and awe. Was that on purpose, or was that just because that's who you guys were?
A little bit of... What
was the play?
Okay, so it wasn't the best play, okay? So hindsight's 20/20, right? So looking back, there's things that obviously I would have done differently or better. We came out with this shock and awe approach to get attention. It was like, if we could be, the more racy and colorful we could be, the more attention we would grab potentially. That was the thought. And a little bit of being ourselves, and also being completely honest, being nervous. I mean, none of us had any media experience whatsoever. Like, I hated being on camera. I hated, like, my voice being recorded. Like, as narcissistic as we all are, I actually
still insecurity.
Yeah, there was still insecurity there of this being completely new to us. And so, I mean, we used to drink and smoke weed before to try and, like, calm ourselves down, which that was also probably a stupid idea looking back. So we did all these things to try and settle us down, and we were really nervous, And honestly, when you listen to the show now, I mean, there's still profanity. I think that it's used more intelligently, sure. To get your attention. And I think it's thoughtful when I do it.
Yeah, sure.
We try and not go to the dick joke thing was like an insecurity of, we don't know where to go in this conversation.
We don't know what to talk about.
We can always talk about that.
Yeah.
Right. So it was very rough. It would also probably explain why the audience wasn't massive yet. Like, we weren't ready for mainstream. We attracted enough people that appreciated those jokes and that were like us, right? So we definitely had
So you're getting validation.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we grew. Like, we were definitely starting to go from hundreds to thousands of people, and then even tens of thousands of people with kind of that formula. So there was this little, false perception that we were doing the right thing.
Right.
But over time, and this is also part of Doug's brilliance, Doug being the producer, would always be like, hey, that was a lot of dick jokes today, Justin, or like...
Or dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, Adam, you dropped about 10 F-bombs today.
Just doing the F-bomb count.
Yeah, so he would kind of like, he would never come at us and be like, and tell us what we had to do, but he would just kind of remind us that it was just a little much, and so over time, and I told your guys this when they were talking to me, we really think that it takes us 200 episodes to like level up a little bit.
Interesting. Every 200, you feel like you're just at the kind of, you've twisted the dial a little bit.
Just a little bit. Like, and part of that, and I just felt one recently again where like I really feel like our verbal fluency, our cadence, even the topics, like I think we've really honed in on the type of topics to cover. Like there's definitely something that's happening around the business right now. The YouTube is reflecting it because it's taking off right now. And I really do think that it is. It's just, and we knew this, like we knew that we never were so confident that we thought that like we knew it all or that like we were really good. It was like what we knew was we had a good message and we had a lot of value to give to people.
Just needed to refine it.
That's right. And eventually we'll figure this shit out. Like eventually we will.
Just like you had everything else.
Yes, exactly. Right. That was the same experience that we had all had and everything else that we had done. It was like I was never, and I guess this is part of the blessing for most of it. Like none of us are gifted anything. Right. Like we weren't gifted.
You had to do the work.
Yeah, I wasn't the smartest kid in the classroom. I wasn't the gifted athlete, but I did well. I had good grades. I also played sports, but I had to work my ass off for it. And so that same process, we just applied that to this and eventually got to a place where I think we honed in on the message better, and now we're a little more mainstream, I guess.
I think you kind of answered my next question, but I still think it deserves some, maybe a little bit more detail, and that is, how did these three dudes, or four guys, so including Doug, never want to leave Doug out of it because he's instrumental in this whole process. How did you go from sort of the talking about working through and working out all the bullshit that exists in the fitness industry and all this bad information, and then coupling it with, hey, providing some good information, to eventually, and you mentioned the leveling up every 200 episodes, but this kind of this leveling up to, or in rubbing elbows with interviews. And I'm going to go down a little list here for people that don't know or don't listen to Mind Pump. I mean, because it's not always just about fitness.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, here's some ones that I've heard that I've been fascinated by and I think are worth 2 and 3 listens because there's just so much, it's so rich in terms of value. Arthur Brooks, the Harvard scientist, right?
Yeah.
Another one, Jordan Peterson, and most people know, scholar and psychologist, right? This one blew me away and was probably one of the better ones I've heard because I'm sort of passionate about the topic on both sides of the aisle, if you will. But Bishop Robert Barron, the Bishop of the Catholic Church.
Love that interview.
And that was crazy. And then obviously we stayed, you stayed in the lane with the fitness thing with some big brains, like guys like Paul Chek, who argues been one of the biggest brains in the business. Right. I mean, at this point, if you're in the fitness industry and you don't know who Paul is, you're not paying attention.
Right.
And if you do, he's probably intimidates you a little bit because, and you respect the hell out of him because of what he's done. I guess my point is, the list just goes on with you guys. How did it get to that?
Well, that's a really good question because this was also, we thought about this before we even started, actually. In fact, even the naming the podcast was thought about around this right here. Like, one of the things that was really beautiful about how this all came together, too, was that everybody was in a place with other businesses and things that the money was, even though we all wanted to build a big business and make money, like I'm not saying that wasn't the case, that didn't matter. We really wanted to build something that like is exactly how we want it. And part of that we all agreed on was like, if I have to come here and I have to talk fitness every fucking day, I know I'll eventually get burnt out.
Yeah.
Because as much as I love it, all three of us, it is our life and it is my passion. I have a lot of other things that I'm very much so into. And so if I'm going to feed my soul, if we're going to feed all of us like that, we cannot allow ourselves to get pigeonholed into just talking fitness. And so that was really the birth of the name Mind Pump. Was we didn't want to be barbell something or, fitness something. Like, we wanted to have a name that allowed us to branch out and people would be, hey, you can't talk about that. You're a bunch of
You're out of the line. You're out of your lane. Yeah.
So we came out very early knowing that one day we would want to have these type of interviews and we wouldn't lose our entire audience. And it was really a beautiful thing to see unfold because there came a time about year 3 and where we almost broke up the podcast, meaning we almost started to start another podcast.
Like kind of different audiences?
Yeah, because and this is and this is also the birth of the intro to the show. Like, we up at this point, we used to not intro the show the way we intro the show. Originally, we just get going and then whatever came out, came out. Well, we started to notice there was a very clear divide in our audience. There was a large portion of people that were obviously there for our fitness knowledge and experience. But we also were starting to attract people that didn't even work out. People that like felt like, man, Adam reminds me of my brother, or Sal is just like my uncle, or like they related to us as characters or as people, and they loved being like a fly on the wall in our conversations that we would have outside of fitness. And then the fact that we had fitness and health knowledge was like a kicker. And so we were like, okay, do we do a different podcast? And we have this one all for fitness and all this one like this.
Interesting.
And that was when we go, you know what? Let's do this. Let's actually not divide the audience, but let's intro them and let them know. So if you don't like because we were getting a little bit of hate, right? We had some people that were like, you need to stay in your lane. Like,
it comes with the territory,
right? That were going to tell me how the fuck I'm going to run my business. Like, get out of here with that. Like, I'm going to, what I'm saying? Like, you need to only talk about this stuff because that's where your wheelhouse.
Listen to somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. We all, and again, that's why I love my partners. We all have the same attitude. It's like, we are not going to bend to these people. Now, can we compromise to try and do both? And we did. That was the idea. Was okay. Instead of dividing it, we would do this intro where we tell the audience the time, like the first 40 minutes is banter. We touch politics, so if you don't want that, stay out of here.
Right.
If you don't want us to talk about spiritual stuff, get out of here with that. If you don't want to hear us talk about economics, get out of here. But then if you want to hear just talk fitness, nerdy stuff, and we do. We have a very clear split audience that is there for both those reasons.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. You talked about the every 200 episodes and leveling up. I mean, how much did that whole process and learning that just contribute sort of to the nourishment of you as an individual and to the team and to the podcast and the business and the audience in terms of growth? I mean, because now you are stepping way outside of what would be typical for you, and you're holding up. I mean, a guy like Jordan Peterson doesn't just come to have a conversation with a couple of dudes. Right. Like there's something there. And so just in terms of your own growth as a person and whatnot, how is the podcast, right? And Mind Pump, how's that contributed?
We've shared this off air definitely many times. I don't know if we've talked about it on air, but we all agree that I have had more growth personally in the last 5 years than the last 35 before that. Like it accelerated for two big reasons, right? One, I'm having conversations with people 10 times more brilliant than me in all different arenas too, right? So, I mean, you name the arena, we've talked to somebody like in that, whether it be politics, economics, religion, fitness, whatever, sports, like just brilliant minds. And so I'm just like downloading all this information. So you're getting growth there. Then you also have this, listening to yourself and your own shit, your own beliefs and what comes out of your mouth. Like there's been many times where, and here's something that I haven't shared before. I actually stopped listening to the episode or the show like a year and a half, 2 years ago, because we went through another stagnant place where I was just kind of, I was kind of over it.
What do you mean? You weren't happy with what you were doing? You weren't happy with the content? You weren't happy with yourself?
I was bored with the content. I was bored with what I was hearing. I was bored with myself. Like I wasn't impressed with my own growth. I wasn't impressed with the evolution of the conversation. I felt like we kind of peaked and plateaued a little bit. And I've been just recently, like literally the last, I'd say 60 to 90 days, been reignited again. Like there's a new fire that for me personally, like the other guys might have a different story, but cause I think Sal's never stopped listening. He's that narcissistic. I think he listens to himself in the shower and all the time. So you already listened to that at least twice. Why are you listening to it anymore? Right. So, I think he's been consistent with it. I did a lot at the beginning because I was trying to critique and stuff. But I did feel like I wasn't happy with the level of growth in the last, 2 years ago or whatever. But recently I have felt it kind of elevate. And again, a lot of that is, hearing what you're saying and your beliefs and the way you communicate certain things and how I articulate my points. I felt. I mean, when I go back, I cringe. If you made me listen to like episode 200 or 400 or something, like I cringe listening to myself. I'm like, oh God, I said that. That's not how I feel.
No, I feel the same way.
So yeah, I mean, and it's a very powerful thing that we have because I used to do this. I talk about how to develop self-awareness. It's like one of my favorite topics is the power of self-awareness. And I tell people how I've learned to develop it myself is I used to do this practice where at the end of every night, I would recount all the things that happened through the day. And what I was looking for was emotional spikes or dips, meaning, something happened in the day and I had this high, at 3:00 I got to talk to Scott and I had this real high from it and knowing that's important, right? It made me feel good. I enjoyed it. The friendship, the conversation, the intelligent communication, okay, this is important, check that box. I need to know that. It's important that I remember that. And then there would be times when you have these dips and these lows and then I'd go well, why did that make me mad? Or why did I get upset about that? And and anytime I'd unpack those ones, especially, a lot of times it led to an insecurity. It'd be oh, wow, that made me mad, not because, Scott said something that was offensive. It's not about him. He can't control my emotions. I got mad because that hurt my feelings because I have an insecurity about X, Y, and Z. Right. So I used to do this to really try and develop my own self-awareness. Well, fucking nothing accelerates that faster than listening. Verbatim to what you said. Right. So hearing that and hearing how you dialogue and have conversations around all these nuanced topics that we cover has really accelerated, my own personal growth and how I feel about a lot of things. And it's changed a lot. There's definitely things that I probably thought or felt early on that is kind of evolved and changed how I communicate that today. So
first question, just kind of follow-up question one, in terms of that self-reflection, peeling back the onion, layers of the onion and unpacking, you mentioned 60 to 90 days ago, you just kind of felt reignited. Can you put your finger on that yet? I mean, has it been developed? Do you really know why, or is it's not quite there yet? Or
no, it's okay. For me, I think I have got better about the way I communicate. So what I was really known for was wearing my emotions on the sleeve, being very radical honest, right? That's part of our core values that comes from me. Like, I talk about that a lot.
Just put it out there.
Yeah, put it out there. So what I was good at early was I will tell you how I feel, no matter what.
It's a double-edged sword sometimes.
It is a double-edged sword because when you're on a platform like we are and you just let things fly off the handle all the times.
Consequences, yeah?
Yeah, there are consequences, and there's a lot of people that don't like me because of that. Now, there's a lot of people that respect me because of that because they appreciate it.
They might not like what you say, but they respect that you're
right.
putting it out there.
And so, I think I've learned over time how to communicate. So I've remained authentic by staying radically honest, but I've learned better ways to communicate how I feel, because that's the other thing too, like how people interpret it is, I have to remember that. Like, so I would just say shit and it's like, okay, if that offends you, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? That's on you. Like this, I'm speaking the truth. So as long as it's my truth, I'm okay with it. But I'm in a position now where so many people are listening and watching that I want to take into consideration how that message is received. Mm-hmm. And I think that I've gotten better at being more empathetic with maybe something that I feel very strongly or passionate about, and I've gotten better at communicating that. And so I felt that recently more than ever. And you allude to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, I think, is one of the best communicators for this. If you ever listen to and here's the thing too, and I think I've shared this with you off air before. The pause like that used to scare the shit out of me.
Mm-hmm. The uncomfortable silence.
Yeah, there's like that, letting that happen. But what I realized is for a listener, like it's totally fine. It lets them gather their thoughts, really intently listen. Jordan Peterson does this when he speaks all the time. Like he'll do long ass pauses where he really gathers his thoughts. And he takes into consideration what he's about to say to the person across from him. And if he's about to ask a really hard question or make a very strong statement, he's very careful. And he always tends to say something with compassion before to let them know that please correct me.
Disarm you.
Yeah, to disarm you, bring down the wall. And so I've learned a lot from that with the way I communicate, because I used to talk so fast, so quick, because I just would speak my mind. I speak from the heart. And I don't think that's so much wrong, but I thought there's a better way to be a better communicator. I've felt that personally, and part of what I think that leveling up is just getting comfortable with that silence.
Interesting. So in just reflection, before we change gears a little bit, looking back, is there a greatest of all time podcast for Mind Pump? And you specifically, not necessarily for Mind Pump, but maybe it is, when you look back and go, man, this one, we nailed, I grew from this, we grew from this, I learned so much, or I was so embarrassed by the way I did this. It ends up being the greatest of all time because of what I learned from that type of scenario. You know what,
there are so many of these for so many different reasons that it really is to heart. I'll give you a couple neat moments though, right? The first time with Paul Chek was a freaking ride. Okay, because that guy, those that don't know Paul Chek, he talk about a radically honest guy who wears his emotions on his sleeves, so I would even challenge him and say that he could get better at, communicating some things, because he really does have the zero fucks attitude.
1,000%.
Yeah,
that first one was a classic.
It was just so much fun, and the immediate respect I had for him when I met him, we got to go to his house. And I had never seen a book collection that looked like this. Now, he's all self-taught, right? So he didn't go to any formal education. The man has read more books than probably most people that I know. But what's more impressive about it was when you go through it, right? And I love to do that. I love to go to someone's house and see their bookshelf and just kind of see what they're reading. It tells a lot about a person. What was so interesting about Paul was that for everything that he read, he also read the opposing view. So it was unbelievable. All the authors that were in there was you would just never see that in the same way. You go to someone's library and you look and you're you could totally oh, okay, I know their political and economic
beliefs. What side of the aisle they stand on.
Yeah, I know where they stand, because you can see all the content they're reading. Where he is so well read on both sides that he was just such a wealth of knowledge to like talk to about everything, about health and fitness and spirituality and psychology. And I mean, and we connected, like he loved us, we loved him. And like, I mean, we call him Uncle Paul. Like, he's become like family to us. So that was very memorable. The other one, you actually pointed his name out too. So two of them are actually your names that you said. So it's ironic, right? Arthur Brooks. Arthur Brooks was a cool, like, oh shit, we're kind of a big deal now. And the reason why that was we show up down in Southern California. We're coming down to meet with Arthur Brooks for the first time, and he's getting ready to do a talk with Bishop Barron. They said, why don't you and your team come down? You could watch the live presentation, and then the next morning at 6 a.m. you could interview him. We're like, whatever, we'll get up at 6, we'll do it. We drove all the way down to Santa Barbara, and they were at this big auditorium. And we come walking in. We got there kind of early, and we walk in the auditorium, and we're at the top. And at the very bottom of the auditorium is Bishop Barron and Arthur Brooks, and then like a group of other people. And Arthur Brooks turns and looks up, and he goes, "Mind pump!"
That's
mind
awesome.
Pump, mind pump. And he yells at us, and we all kind of like look at each other like, okay. And we walk down, and here's the thing. The initial thing is this.
Yes,
right?
he's fucking with you.
Well, here's what I think. Right away, the initial real feeling from that is, this guy's good salesman, right? Like, because some people are really good at this, right? I think I'm good at this. If I have somebody I've never met, I want to make them feel comfortable, right? And so I would do something like that. So at first, I'm going like, oh, good salesman. This guy's going to be a closer, whatever like that. Like he's, acting like he's excited to see us.
He's like us.
He doesn't know who the hell we are, right? Right. So we go heading down there, and he comes, gives us a big old hug, but then he starts going on, just, man, I can't believe this. I can't believe I'm meeting you guys right now. He's kind of blowing us up a little bit.
Fanboying you.
Oh, he's totally, and he's like, you'll never believe what happened like 3 months ago. I was working out in the gym, listening to your podcast, and I heard you talk about my documentary. I dropped the weights. I called my wife right away and told her, and we were just like, all of us, I gotta get goosebumps telling the story again, because I remember the feeling that came over all of us. Like, we were all looking at each other, like getting all excited like little kids, like, oh my God, this dude like is a fan of us. And we'd all seen his documentary. Right. We all really respected the content stuff he was putting out. So to hear that he was like a fan of us, like, oh man, I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget building that. I mean, Sal and him talk every week. Like, they're like, they're the best of buds.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. Like, in fact, I think Sal is taking his baby down there to get baptized by Bishop Barron.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Arthur Brooks like consults with him like every week. Like, they talk all the time. And so that's become like a very close friend of ours. And, that was a very surreal moment for us to feel that, because you live in this kind of bubble where we talk on this mic, and I know that there's lots of people that are listening to me, but you don't really
the impact.
Yeah, you don't really notice it until you get in front of like someone like that, or get in front of groups. Like, it was like the live events. Like, the first time we did a live event, that was a very emotional time for me too. I remember I cried. And I cried because of the overwhelming feeling that I felt of these people that I've
seen it for you guys. Yeah.
Oh man, it was wild to get in front of these people and to hear them like tell their story. And it was like, holy shit, they feel like I did this. Like, wow, this is crazy. So yeah, those were some really cool highlights.
To take that one step further, I had that same feeling, not because we had Mind Pump in the studio. We've had like 2 or 3 now collaborative events where you guys have been here, but for the gratitude people showed us for having you here.
Wow.
And giving them the opportunity to come listen and meet you and have that experience. So,
wow, that's wild.
Yeah, so.
Very surreal.
Yeah, coming right back at you. So speaking of babies getting baptized, it seems there's been something in the water over there at Mind Pump the last, 18 months or so. And we got babies on board now.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Justin was already a dad times 2, and Sal was a dad times 2, and Doug's a dad times 1, right? And finally you made the club.
I was the last one to get on board, and truth be told, I actually, there was a time in Katrina and I's relationship where we had the talk that we might not have a kid. So I actually thought I might not become a father. You want to dive into like insecurities and my shit, right? So I mentioned earlier that I didn't have like my father. My father committed suicide when I was 7. And then my mom married into an abusive relationship. So I was really, really adamant about not definitely bringing another life into this world and having anything resemble what I went through.
Fucking that up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so...
I think it's natural, man.
And I think so too, right? And I think a lot of people who didn't really know me thought that like I was like this, I was going through Peter Pan syndrome where I didn't want to settle down, or that I had commitment issues and like I didn't want to, marry and have a kid. It wasn't that at all. It was... I had goals that I set myself a long time ago that I knew where I wanted to be financially before I ever brought a child in this world. And not because money is the answer to being a good father at all, but what I didn't want was, I didn't want the pursuit of my financial goals or the pursuit of providing for my family to get in the way of me raising my child. And when I finally brought a kid in this world, I wanted to have built something where I had the flexibility to pour my heart and soul into being a father. And so when we were about 36 or so, like I'm turning 40 this year now, I was about 36. Katrina and I almost broke up because we'd already been together 6 years. And, she was starting to feel the pressure from her family. Her clock is ticking, right? She's a year older than me too. And, she's like, are we gonna do this, or are we not gonna do this? Yeah, right. And I said, hey, you knew where I was at from the very beginning, and we're not there yet. Like we haven't arrived. I haven't arrived. Maybe you're okay where we're at financially, but I know the type of father I want to be able to be, and I know what I need to do to get there, and I'm not ready yet. And we separated for a few days. I actually came back to pack my stuff and go, and she was sitting on the bed, and she said that, I want to talk to you. And I said, okay. She goes, I thought really long and hard about it. And she goes, and I thought about my life without you and, finding some other man and marrying him and having kids and this and that. And she goes, and I couldn't picture me being happy. And she goes, I would rather be with you and never have a child than to marry someone just to have a child. So if you'll accept me and accept me back, I want to do this with you no matter what.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a very powerful moment for me and in our relationship. And, the irony of it was not long after that, because mine had already started and was going. Hadn't really taken off yet. But then around 38 was when it really started hitting. And then it did. I'm at a place right now, and, I tuck my kid in every single night. He's now on we're going to be 2 years old. I've never missed a night of reading to him. I come home from work most days at 3:00 in the afternoon. I spend it with him all the way till then. Like, I'm present in every moment. Like, those things matter to me. And then of course we live in a nice place. We don't, there's nothing we don't do that we want to do. And that's where I wanted to be. That was really important to me. So I am a dad now. I'm excited to be dad. I love every bit of it. And I love every bit of it because I waited until this point, because I don't have the stress and pressure of like, oh my God, how am I going to pay for the bills and like that. And I watched a lot of the verbal and physical abuse that my parents had, that took everyone through. Almost always was centered around money. Mm-hmm. The holidays.
Stress, right.
The holidays were the worst because there was pressure to buy presents. Mm-hmm. Or if we couldn't pay the bills, like we had many nights, we had many houses we were evicted from. Many times we couldn't pay the PG&E bill, and we had candles lit or the food in the ice chest. Like, I didn't want that, and that always caused this massive blow up, and then turned into this crazy, verbal, physical abuse. And I was like, I don't want anything. I was so, and it, to a fault, I understand. Like, I know that like I was probably really extreme on the other way. If you were to ask somebody else, I probably could have been totally comfortable and fine probably 8 years ago or whatever, but not for me.
Well, that was kind of what I wanted to add, man. I mean, we got done sharing sort of at the beginning of this. I'm the luckiest guy in the world from a parental perspective and an upbringing. 2 loving parents, completely supportive the whole time. Everything I ever did, never wanted to do, they were always there. Didn't always like what I was doing, but they always supported me. And I was freaked out when my ex-wife got pregnant. Not because I wasn't ready to be a dad, but because I didn't know if I was going to be a good dad or not. And I was really concerned about it. I think it's naturally a thing. If there's any dad out there that hasn't felt that, then I think they're entering into fatherhood in the wrong kind of way. But that's not to take away from your experience and your challenges and the things that you wanted to do and do right by you and your partner and your and your son.
I heard Arthur Brooks share a story about he was in a cab or something like that, and somebody was asking him about like fatherhood and everything like that, and they were giving him and the guy asked like, what's your one tip or advice to being a great father? And he said, you already did it. And he's like, huh? He was like baffled by it. He's like, the fact that you care and that's important to you, you've already won 60% of the battle right there. And I think that's a true statement. I think that if you're a dad who doesn't care about those things, you're already failing. And if you do already care, like you already got half the battle already. So
yeah, if that's 60% of it, I think maybe the other 40% is just be there.
Right.
Just be there, be present.
Yeah, no doubt.
Be available. So on that note, if you had to go back now, I think you said 8 years, maybe a little bit more than this, go back to 25-year-old Adam and give him some advice on how to prepare to be a father at 25 and the things you were doing then, what would you tell yourself?
You know what? Like, I would go back and tell 25-year-old Adam probably a lot of different things, but I wouldn't change a single thing about how it all played out to leading, because I lived up my single life for sure. Many Vegas trips, dated a lot of people, had a lot of fun, learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about the type of partner that I wanted. I mean, that was, what a lesson that was. For the first, 10 years of dating women, I dated women based off of my insecurities. I think a lot of people do this and they don't even know this. I think you don't realize that you gravitate towards these people that like make you feel good about your insecurity, and they don't help you really grow through it. And it's not the right person. Like I used to date girls that I was like the father figure, and I thought that that's what I needed, right? Like because it felt good initially, because I wanted to be a leader, I wanted to be this man like who had the answers,
right? And also probably because whether literally or figuratively, they're signing off on your bullshit,
right?
They're letting you do what you want to do, and letting you have what you want to have versus being accountable to what you should or shouldn't.
And so for I was doing that past 25. It wasn't until maybe a couple of girlfriends before Katrina did I finally realize like that's not the right woman for me. The right woman for me will be my equal, right? That someone who is going to challenge me, mentally, is going to push me to be a better person. That is also growth minded, like. And I mean, I'm so blessed that I went through all that first, because I don't know if I would have figured that out. I don't know if like 25-year-old, like if I went back and said, this is the type of girl you need to be like, yeah, right, bro. I got this, So, and I wouldn't change it. I think that I'm so glad, like when I think about like also this is when I talk to dads that are considering being a young dad, is one of probably the harder things I would think if you're a dad at like 25 or in early 20s, is that feeling of like missing out on stuff.
Right.
Like I don't have any of that. Like there's no like I want to go to Vegas or I did that so much that I'm long over all that, and like I can't wait to get home and see my son.
Right.
Like Katrina, like this weekend coming up, she's like, hey, we don't have any plans. You want to go do this? You know what? I just actually want to hang around with Max all day. Like,
is that cool?
Yeah, like literally, that is. I don't feel like I'm sacrificing to do that. It's what I really want to genuinely do, and I'm sure that comes off and is felt that way, where if I was very, very selfish in my early 20s because I came from so little, and when I got to a place where I started to have abundance in my life, I wanted it all for myself. So I was a very, very selfish person, but luckily I had the self-awareness to know that, and to know like I'm not in a place to live my life for another human being. I need to get this all out of my system.
Yeah. So interesting, like going back to the partying and the being 25 and making poor decisions, but also at the same time trying to be aware of the good decisions. Let's go back to you as a professional, a coach, a trainer at 25.
Okay.
Knowing what you know now as a dad.
Okay.
Having watched Katrina have to go through the things that she went through to get to this point as a mom, and the things that she, her responsibility as a mom, and then the relationship now and everything else.
Yeah.
When you go back as a trainer, would you have handled yourself differently with clients, coaching?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Then, and okay, so.
I wasn't even a really good trainer. Let's be honest. I wasn't a good trainer.
What would you tell people?
I wasn't a good trainer. Like I was really good at sales. That's what I was good at. Truth be told, like I come from a family, a long line of salespeople. and I like people, and I enjoy talking, and I love fitness, and so it worked. But I was a terrible trainer for a long time, and I know if you were to, and I'm probably being hard on myself. If you interviewed one of my clients, they'd be like, "Oh my God, he was amazing." Like, I don't think I was, for a lot of different reasons. One, the experience and the knowledge wasn't quite there yet. Like, I really needed to put the reps in to really fully grasp everything. I had I had like 8 national certifications. So I had like the education. I was smart enough, like, but there's a whole other level to this game when you learn the psychological part and component of training clients and coaching people. That didn't come till way later. Like, for example, when I was a young trainer, one of the first things you do is you sit down and you do your PAR-Q, your measurements, body fat, you ask them questions, your goals, this and that. Oh, what do you do for fitness right now? And if someone would be like, oh, well, my husband and I, we get up and we walk every day. I'd be like, that's not fitness. You know how many calories you burn when you walk? Like, nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not fit. Like, we
will fail.
Yeah, right. So I would say things like that. Totally terrible. Which the irony of that is, when I talk to somebody today and I go, what are your fitness goals? And, the very first place I start is, well, let's start with like a 20-minute walk.
Let's move a little bit more.
Yeah. And it's so funny that was something that I would scoff at and be like, wouldn't even pay attention to or talk to, or now it's where I start everybody. So, yeah, what we learned, and I also think this speaks to why the podcast does so well, is I think we spend more time speaking to the behaviors around nutrition, the relationship with nutrition, the behaviors and relationship with exercise, more than we actually talk about all the nuances of biomechanics, the latest study, macro breaking down, periodization, like all that shit. Like,
there's technical, then there's application.
Right. And, that's cool if I'm just trying to sound smart to my peers or prove that, like, I know how to do all that stuff. But if my real desired outcome is changing people's lives and really fundamentally building in good behaviors that is going to carry them on for a long time and a healthier life, then a lot of that bullshit don't even matter. Nope. And so I didn't know that at 25. At 25, when I was...
You want to give all that information.
Yeah, I gave you all the answers to the test, right? As to show you how smart I was. Right. That was the way of training back then. I was like, oh, you want to lose 15 pounds, build 5 pounds of muscle? Oh.
Let me give you this list of 80 things you need
to do. Here's the program, here's the diet, and then I was a glorified cheerleader and counter. And honestly, I was like a good counter. Like, that's what I was known for.
A rep counter?
Yeah, I could count really well and make the session fun and interactive.
I still can't count.
Yeah. That was what I was good at. I was good at counting. I was good at, like, making your session fun. And so that's why probably somebody else would go like, oh, he was so good. But I wasn't that good, because when I had an epiphany around 26 when I'd collected all these trophies that said I was the number one trainer and shit. And I remember thinking to myself, like, God, if I'm the number one trainer, why do I not see all the people that I've changed their life in this gym all the time? Like, they're all long and gone, or they're still paying me, to kind of do the same bullshit. Like, I realized that, like, I was good at getting people committed to paying me money, but I wasn't really good about getting them to implement the behaviors to really fundamentally change their life. And that was like a major turning point for me of, like, starting to kind of change the way I looked. And it took a long time.
So, in terms of giving them the right information and implement the right behaviors and move, the term used a lot is big rocks, and then worry about the smaller things later. We're in such a wild time right now. We're finding out so many things about so many things, right? We got COVID that, the world's gone through. We're coming out the other end. One of the things we're finding out is how unhealthy people are, right? And that, this pandemic very well could be a symptom of the bigger problem, right, which is an unhealthy population who has taken so many wrong turns and somehow has found itself in a place where they're not resilient and they're not healthy and they're so susceptible to so many things. And this really isn't new. This isn't new information. It's just maybe people are more aware, people are more self-aware of it. The crusade that you've been on with Mind Pump and the crusade I've been on for many, many years in my career is, to give the truth, to give the direction, to be a thought leader in helping people to understand what it is that they need to do. And it's become more than ever we're sifting through this garbage and trying to pull out the pieces and the context and everything else. Dude, are we failing? What has happened? Like, I mean, is this all for naught? Have we just completely failed?
I think about that a lot, actually, especially when statistically speaking we are. Because what I just saw the latest numbers on obesity, right? We're now up to almost 7%. Right now we're at 46% obesity, 70-something% of overweight.
Yep.
So almost half of the people that you see every day are, clinically obese, and pretty much everybody you see is pretty much overweight. We're definitely losing. I mean, it's more like baseball, right?
Statistics.
Right. Batting 300 is really good.
Great. Yeah.
You don't ever see anybody batting 500 or 800, right? So it's what it feels like sometimes. Yeah, I think that we're at a very interesting time. What I want to believe is that the pendulum is swinging really, really hard in this direction that's not in our favor of like overall health, like both social, mental, spiritual, physical, everything, right? I think your guys and I were talking even about like just
financial.
Yeah, everything, right? Yeah, exactly, right? At all levels of health, we are really like swinging hard one direction. And I want to believe that we're getting close to that side where it has to come back, I think I really, and that gives me hope. I mean, obviously it's incredible job security, right? Because if you continue to have sick, overweight, obese people, the message needs to be heard no matter what. But I mean, I want to be optimistic. I want to believe that. And you know what? And the optimistic side of me goes like this, it's this, right, is all very new. And there's going to come a time where the cream will rise, and we'll be able to sift through all the bullshit and the flash in the pan influencer and the people that just hack the algorithm. And at the top will be the people that are providing really valuable, life-changing type of content to people. And then I like to think that hopefully we'll start to make a real big dent in this. Like, I know in our community we're making a big dent, but we're still in a very small pond. Maybe we're like a medium-sized fish, or maybe you can consider us even a big fish a little bit, but we're in a very small pond.
Sure, absolutely.
And we really are trying to, Sal with his book coming out and stuff like that, we're really trying to break into, true mainstream. I feel like we're finally, our communication skills and everything is getting to where we're ready for mainstream, but we're not mainstream,
Right.
We're not known like Jillian Michaels, who's still giving advice to people out there.
Stop it.
Right. So, but again, these mediums, these things are still in their infancy. And so the optimistic side of me says, okay, like the pendulum's really far. It's got to come back really soon here. We're really just starting to get, the good people in this space to try and rise to the top. And yeah, dude, I hope in the next 3 to 5 years we start to see it come to their way.
So that's the challenge, right? Trying to make the connection. Right, and that's what you're trying to do, through the podcast and through your programs and through all the different partnerships and things that you have.
And you got to fight fire with fire.
Yeah, absolutely, 1,000%. You have to come at it head on. You can't play in the shadows and expect to be productive in that sense. But what's the disconnect? So we're trying to make the connection. What is the friction? What is the major disconnect in getting the message out there so that people feel compelled, they feel challenged, and they finally feel inspired to take responsibility for their health, for their wellness. And I don't mean like you should do this because it sucks to be fat, it sucks to be obese, it sucks to be overweight. But no, because you want to improve the quality of your life. You want to be better for your son. You want to be better for your daughter. You want to be better for your partner. You don't want to be a burden to the system. You don't want to be a burden to your family. Well, what's the disconnect there?
Well, there's personal responsibility. We live in a time right now where nobody wants to take personal responsibility. We just want to point the finger at everybody. And the scary part is that, is it going to have to get a lot worse before we start to take more personal responsibility? And you're right, the reasons for doing it shouldn't be because you want to look a certain way or even that you want to live a longer life. It's that when you are healthier, and this is the connection, like, and this again, this is talk about things that have evolved as a trainer, like how to communicate to these clients. When I have a client eat something that I want them to eat that maybe they don't care to eat very much, or do an exercise or do something that like is challenging or hard for them, I don't just leave it there. Like there's got to be a follow-up to that to help them make a connection to other aspects of their life than like this superficial calories in, calories out, lose weight, gain weight, the way you look type of shit. And that is to like, I follow up that like, okay, I got them to eliminate, X product or thing, and I've added this thing that I know they're missing, right? So I've got the knowledge base enough to look at a diet, the way somebody eats, know that they're lacking in these things. They're abusing these things. Okay, now first hurdle is, can I get them to introduce one or two things that I know will make them feel better, right? That they're needing, right? Then it could be a whole host of things. They could be lacking in magnesium. They could be lacking in fiber or protein or whatever, right? I'm only going to pick one or two things. I'm going to get it in there. And then I'm going to look at a couple of things that I know is not helping, at all, and maybe just get rid of one because I don't want to overwhelm them. Right. But then it doesn't stop there because and the communication isn't about, oh, did you lose weight this week? It's, how'd you feel? How productive were you at work today? How positive? What was your mood like? What's your hair like? What's your skin? How'd you sleep? And you help them make that connection that, oh wow, when I love myself, when I take care of my body, when I make these choices that are better for me, holy crap, it makes all these other aspects of my life that much better. And as a byproduct, it also gets me in shape, which is what got me through the door originally to come in here, is to lose my body fat or to look a certain way. And so that's what we're trying to change the conversation. We're trying to change the conversation from what most people walk in the door with. Most people that do make a decision to try fitness or to work out or get a gym membership, the actual initial thing that pushes them to do that is an insecurity. Right. Is, I don't like myself. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I feel. Or my doctor told me I'm going to die if I don't do this thing. And so that's not the right reason. That's not what's going to keep them. Fear. Yeah, exactly. That is not, just like with fear of leadership, right? That's fleeting. It only lasts so long. They have to be motivated to want to take care of themselves because they realize they're a better version of themselves because of those things, regardless of their weight on the scale up or down. So that conversation, I think, is a very important one that we're trying to have, and we're trying to influence our peers to have more of. And I think that while people are getting worse and trying all the gimmicks and all the bullshit and going that way, while we're also trying to have better I want to believe it'll start to come, and then maybe somewhere we meet in the middle, and that's hopefully what sends it over the top.
So you talk about it getting sort of worse before it gets better, and that lack of accountability or personal responsibility and the searching for the easy button or the way to not have to take more responsibility leads people to, certain other behaviors or buying decisions to try to take care of their health and fitness, right? And they're looking for, well, how can I do this in the most comfortable, non-disruptive, and in some cases private, kind of way that I can. Which brings me to, this last year again, and all the things that we're discovering, all the things we're learning, particularly with technology and innovation. There's been so much innovation in our, well, just in general from a technology perspective. You start to look at, fitness apps and how many things get downloaded and how many people are kind of latching on. And interestingly, with all the apps, if you look at the research, what it'll show is it's not just fitness. People are thinking about stuff. It's mindfulness. It's things like Calm and Headspace and those kind of things that people are downloading. But we're starting to see this push for new fitness equipment, right? Like, what's the new answer now? Where are we coming to? We've got things hanging on walls with mirrors that talk to us, and we've got bikes that we sit on that go nowhere that have screens in front of us, and they're reaching for what seems to be the right thing or gives them emotional fulfillment.
So obviously we're alluding to the heated debate that I had on Instagram, right?
Okay, maybe.
So recently, well, first of all, let me start with how it came up, right? So I love this stuff. I follow all these businesses, and I'm very intrigued by all of them. And on the podcast, I brought up on the show, I said, hey, Tonal just took on, I think $200-something million, and their valuation is $1.6 billion.
I think it was 250, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Something like that. And by the way, today or yesterday, another one of those, it's not Mirror, it's not Tonal. There's a third one that's very similar. This one has more weights involved in it, but similar. Just took on $200-something million, also another crazy valuation. And I got into a huge debate with my buddy. And of course, I obviously offended him because he's financially vested in the company. And, he's a very smart guy, and he happens to know the CEO, and he knows the KPIs, and he knows a lot about...
He's got all the insight to the financials and the back end.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm like, I'm not denying any of that. I'm not denying that they didn't come up with a legitimate valuation somehow. Like, I've done the same thing for my company, so I can tout the numbers that we're valued at. But I also, as a CEO, know our weaknesses and where we could disappear tomorrow, like if we don't watch our back, right? Mm-hmm. So you'd be a fool to think that doesn't exist in all these companies also. So that's one. The second big thing is this. So long as it's treating the symptom and it is not the cure, we are going to be in the same boat.
Some circle.
That's right. And if you think that Tonal, Mirror, Peloton, Orange Theory is the cure to the obesity epidemic, you're dead wrong. And I'll fight that argument all day with somebody, and I'll stand on my experience of being in this business and seeing tons of businesses just like this that were brilliant at the time, great marketing.
They'll come and go.
That's right. That treat the symptom really well. They build a lot of good hype. They hire a lot of good executives behind it. They know how to go out and prey on everybody's insecurities and get them to sign up and buy initially. But because it's not the cure, it will eventually be a coat hanger for somebody. Mm-hmm. And I'll take the Pepsi challenge on that all day long. And the reason why I have so much faith in what we're building and what we're doing is because, like you alluded to earlier, is we're trying to change the conversation to what the cure is. And the cure is responsibility, personal responsibility and accountability, and taking care of yourself because you love yourself, learning to meet yourself where you're currently at in your fitness goal, and slowly building upon that to make a lifestyle change. It is not some digital bullshit that's going to be a quick fix answer because it's convenient in your home. And if you think that is the answer, you're dead wrong. And so, yeah, I got into a heated debate with my buddy with that, and he did not want to let up at all. He kept coming at me back and forth, and
right.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah, again, back and forth, and that's healthy, right? Yeah, because it definitely spawns some conversation, and again, hopefully, it gets people to kind of think about it. A $1.6 billion valuation on a piece of equipment. And again, it's not a piece of equipment, it's a company that sells a piece of equipment. I think the question, can be interpreted a couple different ways. Yes, if you're looking at it literally and figuratively, or literally, you don't have maybe an insight to the financials, so you don't know what it's really worth. However, if you're asking the consumer, of fitness, and you're asking the person that's trying to make a decision or is finally at a point in their life where they feel compelled, like, okay, I really need to do something about my health. This COVID shit really scared me. And I know I want a more resilient, stronger, body. What's the right answer for me? If you're asking them if they think it's worth a $1.6 billion valuation, I think that's a different question altogether.
Well, I think even the way, and part of how, I don't know if you actually went through the argument.
No, I went through the whole thing. It was entertaining, to say the least.
I kept putting overrated in quotation marks to try and get him to understand that I'm not saying that the company's overvalued, that all the analytics didn't add up to come up with the right valuation. Okay, that's above my pay grade. I'm not in there. I can't say it. What I am saying is the piece of equipment overrated. That's what all I was asking, and I do believe I'm qualified enough to ask that to my audience because of my experience. And for him to think that I can, I think you're ridiculous. I don't. They're evaluating these companies, in all of them, as a tech company, not as a fitness company first.
It's a whole other silo.
And that's and where he made a mistake in this argument was he kept referring back to how Instagram was losing money, and they still got a multi-billion-dollar valuation and sold at X and blah 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 blah. It's like, okay, 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% if that's a terrible, because you only prove my argument more.
Not a good platform.
Nobody is addicted to any piece of fitness equipment the way people are addicted to Instagram. I mean, the average Instagram user right now is spending like 4 hours a day on Instagram.
It's fucking apples and oranges.
Yeah, it's completely apples and oranges. They're using it like everybody uses it. First of all, fat, skinny, tall, doesn't matter. They spend hours and hours consuming mindless content on it all day long, where very few people even last longer than 4 to 6 weeks doing any sort of anything fitness related, because it takes discipline. It's hard. It's not fun. The results come on slow. Complete opposite. So I already think that this new age of evaluating tech fitness companies like a tech company is already a mistake in the first place.
Time will tell. Yeah, time will definitely show. I mean, we've seen it all come full circle a million times, and what it comes down to is an individual who has individual things that need attention, and they need to be doing it in a way that works for them at a place and a time that works best.
And I don't like to, because I know I piss in his Cheerios when I talk about Orange Theory too. Is like, listen, I'm not hating on a company that is trying, and I don't know their real desired outcome, but it is supposedly trying to really help people or not. And if them treating the symptom will lead more people searching for the cure,
hey, more power to them.
I'm all for it.
Right.
I'm all for it. But you're a fool if you think that's the cure, because that way of training is not the answer.
Yeah, let's be careful about what we're promising people.
That's right.
Yeah, totally get it. Well, could this be why? Because there's this argument back and forth, and looking at things. Could this be why? Because we can't seem to agree on fitness, technology, and there's these, let's be honest, there's egos, there's narcissism, as we've already covered. Is this why the fitness industry just completely didn't have a voice this last year? I mean, except for those people that openly defied, state and county mandates, and got on social media and were on the news and got media coverage for pushing back and staying open and all those things. Why were we labeled part of the problem and not part of the solution?
Well, the short answer is the majority of us are a bunch of insecure wimps that are running all these businesses. I mean, most of the people that I know that have got into fitness and have done well in it, they got into it, back to my original point of why people walk in the gym, was because of an insecurity. I was a kid. The thing that motivated me to go to the gym was attracting girls and being teased for being skinny. Like, that was like what got me in the gym day in, day out, hammering the weights, was that if you stay in that place and you don't ever grow, you certainly are not in a position to lead our country or be a leading voice in the health and fitness space. And so we have a bunch of people, a bunch of sheep in our space that are exactly that are still learning, growing, and insecure themselves. And by the way, I'm not saying everyone, because there were outliers. Like, I don't know if you follow, I think his name's Ian Smith.
I do.
Okay. An example of somebody who stuck it to the man, right? I mean, I really appreciate the content that he puts out. In fact, we sent him over a fitness and freedom flag that we had made, and sent him a nice little letter and said, love what you're doing, and Mind Pump supports you. And so I just think there's not a lot of those voices in our space. And honestly, they're diluted by all the Kardashian Instagrams.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot more of those and a lot more people paying attention to those people. And so I don't think the voices don't exist. I don't think that the message, the good, right message, isn't out there. It's just not the popular one.
Yeah, I think we lack the congruency, but we also lack having that figurehead or that person, whoever it might be, that really does speak for all of us and speak for the people, and in a sense can do it articulately, but also do it honestly, and do it in a way where people can get behind it and kind of listen to it. And again, the shirtless selfie guy and the ass pick, Fitspo person that's putting out the content seems to be getting all the attention. And until we have more people, on the team and on board trying to spread, the message to the masses.
That's the mission of Mind Pump, man. I mean, that's really where, and that's why, telling you earlier, like I know we're nowhere near there yet.
Yeah.
Until we are that voice, until that we're respected on that level where we've become so much an authority that like people are wondering what's Mind Pump going to say about something. We have a lot more room to grow.
Yeah.
So that's like exactly the stuff that motivates us is as much excitement around the growth and everything that we've had. There's still a lot of work to be done for us, and I hope one day that we get to represent our voice like that.
Well, that said, I mean, we're coming out the other side. The tide is turning here. We're shifting. We're starting to see, gyms are starting to come back. We had a little conversation, before about how, Mind Pump is starting to feel a little bit better about kind of things, and you personally. But for those people that have survived and kind of come out the other end at this point, what advice? And I mean this from the fitness space perspective, because so many people are gone now that won't be back. It's not that they can't contribute, but a lot of small business, a lot of gyms, particularly here in California. What advice would you give them on kind of how to thrive in the new climate? What do they need to do? If they got to this point, what do they need to do or continue to do?
Well, I think that you have to understand that we're playing in a new medium. So it depends on who I'm talking to, right? If I'm talking to an old guy or I'm talking to a young guy, right? Or girl, whatever. I was talking to your guys earlier when they were doing videos of me over at the studio and talking, that there's an advantage to someone like you who is, we would consider you an old dog.
Yep, gotcha. I'll take that label. Look at my face.
So there's an advantage that you have, and then there's also a disadvantage. Right? The disadvantage is guys like you and I are just like, TikTok, Snapchat, Facebook. This is weird. It's weird. I don't know how to do this. Like that's right. We sound, but where we're really comfortable is right here, or how to operate something like this and the importance of it. And I was telling them, I said, it's really not that different. It's just a new and different medium. And all you have to learn how to do, if you're an older guy or girl who's been in the space for a long time, is you need to learn how to take those really core business principles that made you successful in the brick and mortar, and you need to learn how to translate that into podcasting, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, communicate that message there. It doesn't really change. I think that even the old dog who gets in there gets a little hung up on, or can get caught up in the hype around all the other young kids growing around them and go like, oh my God, I just started this Instagram thing and I've been clipping away at it for the last 6 months and I've only got 300 followers, and this stupid kid who, all he does is this dumb thing and he's got 10 million already. Like, it's okay. Because here's the thing, like when you were starting a brick and mortar business, if 10 people walked in your business, what would you do? You would walk over to them and you would make them feel like family, like Cheers, right?
Yep.
And it's no different when you're doing it on social. And this is the mistake that I think the young kids make that don't know any better, that never built a brick and mortar business, that just see what everybody's doing on Instagram and Facebook, and they're just trying to hack an algorithm, and they're just worried about getting their number up higher, versus the few people that are paying attention to how are you servicing them, how are you adding value into their life, how are you making them feel like they're at Cheers every single day. That should be where your focus is getting that honed in really well. And then you will eventually start to attract people like that. I mean, we just barely hit 100K, which sounds like a ton probably for someone like you who's trying to build all that. But the business is way bigger than, 100,000 followers. It's much bigger than that. We've been flying on the radar for a long time because we didn't worry about that. We didn't worry about like what that, what that number looked like. We were more concerned, what were the few people that were paying attention to us, what were they saying about us, and how were we impacting their lives? And so my advice to somebody that's coming out of COVID and trying, or either just getting into fitness and trying to navigate the waters right now, or just keep their head above water from what happened last year, is one, like Gary Vee says, you got to look at all these social platforms as real estate, and you should own real estate in all of them. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, at least the big monsters. Podcasting, I think, is great too. You should have real estate there, and you should start to be trying to service your 5 or 10 people that are paying attention to you on this platform. And I'll tell you from experience that it still baffles me. There is a very clear difference of an audience that watches us on YouTube and listens to us on iTunes. It's a different business. We even have now started to do a different intro and provide different stuff for the YouTube channel than what we do for the podcast because they're different. And so it's like a whole nother business. And the same thing goes for like what's going on our Instagram. They're different communities. It attracts a different type of person that wants to use that channel to learn about you or hear your message. And so, and this goes for anybody who even wants to have a gym like what you guys have. Like having the gym, this is where you guys can do what you do best, like impact lives personally and show results and interact and be social and connect. Like that's cool. But then you want to have these other things that complement that. And I gave this advice the other day about somebody asked on the podcast, a kid, I'm trying to start my Instagram and I have clients in person. How would you grow your Instagram? I said, I wouldn't worry about growing my Instagram so much and adding followers. What I would do with my Instagram or Facebook, take any medium, social media, is I would want it to complement my in-person business, meaning what would drive the content on Instagram would be the conversations that I'm having in person with my clients. So I've got Susie today, and Susie comes in and she goes, Adam, I just found out I have gout. And I'm like, I'm a new trainer. I don't know what gout is. I have to go look it up. I got to research it. I got to see what causes it. I got to see what foods to stay away from. I got to see like what exercise to do. Guess what? I got my next 3 posts for Instagram. I'm going to talk about gout.
What's happening?
What is gout? What are ways? And what does that do? It just adds value to Susie, who's already paying me, who's like, oh man, this guy's badass. He got my answer. I've got a place I can reference it and go back and look at it. And then I go back to the client and I got Bob the next day. And Bob's like, struggling. He's got gut inflammation. He's got this issue and he doesn't know what it is. And he's asking me and I don't know. So I go research and I go learn. And then I go, okay, let me put that content on my social media. And so I'm not worried that I only have 100 people that are paying attention to me. What I care about is the people that are paying attention to me and the people that are paying me right now, that I'm doing the most I can to add value to them. And what will happen, is I will start to attract somebody else who has gout, and that needs help or was looking for that information, or somebody else that has gut issues you'll slowly build that way. But it'll be much easier for you to do that way because you'll simultaneously be adding value to the people that are already paying, which only allows you to either increase price or retain people. And then it'll also open the door for you to find people virtually that are also struggling with the same thing. So that would be my advice to somebody who is running a business that's a brick and mortar or a trainer in person. But don't also be naive to just go like, oh, I got a cool business where I make, 60 to 100 grand a year training clients. I don't need that shit. I'm over it or I'm not into it. Like that, to me, that's being a little naive that this is kind of the future. And, the next generation this is their main. I mean, now literally like this in your and I's, generation, they used to say the average client would shop a trainer for 3 months before they would buy him. Well, shopping a trainer for 3 months looked like this. You go to the gym, you sit on the elliptical, and you watch him train,
right?
For 3 months. Like, I like that Adam guy. He's interactive. He talks to his client. He looks like fun. I'm going to go hire him. That's not how it looks. Now what it looks like is...
You got to see me 10 times,
That's right. I'm going to go look, Mind Pump Adam. Like, look at his Instagram. What's he talking about? What's he doing? That's how they're shopping you and they're looking at you. So even if they're not following you right away, they're viewing the conversations, the things that you're doing and you're having, and those are all your real potential clients. That's really what you should be worried about. Don't worry about being the most popular person on there. Worry about adding as much value as you can to the few people that are following you, and then it'll slowly grow.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
I got one last question. So that handles kind of the business owner coming out of COVID and trying to get it going in the fitness business or keep it going. The last question would be, how about for the person now who is maybe been out of the game a while or hasn't ever entered into the game, and they realize they need to start doing something a little bit different for themselves to take care of themselves, to be healthy, to, whether it be exercise, nutrition, resiliency, stress management, all the things that they're hearing us talk about and all the things they hear and see on Instagram. Where do they start, man? What should they do? What should the consumer of fitness be really focused on right now versus maybe before? Okay, well, first start with this. Motivation is bullshit. Self-belief is everything. And motivation is a feeling, and it's very fleeting. It's fleeting, right?
So if you lean heavily on, watching your favorite Instagrammer get you hyped, or watching a video, or somebody's got a lot of energy to get you in, know that really, really soon you'll be faced with, a really tough time, because that will go. Just like happiness and sadness, these feelings come and go, and so does motivation. And if you haven't committed yourself to changing behaviors, then when those hard times come, you're going to fold, because your emotions don't align with what you need to get to the bandwidth. Right. And to go deeper on that, the trick to that is to know where to meet yourself at. And so if you have been sitting on the couch all through COVID, eating Doritos, not working out whatsoever, and you're okay, now maybe you got the vaccine, now you're going to go back to working out, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to change my ways. Like, that's it. I'm committed. I'm going to go buy a trainer. I'm going to go get a membership. I'm going to go start working out.
I'm doing all the things.
Right. I'm going to start doing all the stuff. I would caution you. And I would tell you, I would say, listen, you weren't doing none of that shit just a month ago. So what you should do is pick one or two things that you can change forever in your life, and prove to yourself that you can first start to do it for a few months. And that could be something as simple as cutting something out that isn't serving you. A vice I dealt with for years, sodas. Mm-hmm. You love to drink sodas all the time. I know it's not serving my body. It's pretty much empty calories. I know that the sugar only makes me crave more sugar and more bad food. It also kills my palate for vegetables and fruit. So maybe that's my thing. I go, you know what? I know it's not serving me. I know it's not ideal. I know when I don't drink soda, I eat better. I do this. So that's it. Just commit to that. And then after you've proven to yourself that it's become a behavior, then add something else. And then when you add, like, let's say fitness, and I'm not saying that you can't do a few of these things together. Okay. So I want to make that clear. I really do, who I'm talking to at where they're at. Right. And that's what makes a good coach and trainer. It's
understanding how to find that.
Yeah. Is seeing where that person is and then meeting them there. Like, for example, if I got somebody, in fact, my cousin, who's part of the marketing team, he watches that show, My 600-Pound Day, or whatever it's called. Have you seen that? Or whatever? My 600-Pound Life, or whatever.
I've heard of it. I don't think I've made it.
So basically, it falls around, and he's like, "Hey, cuz," he's like, "Have you ever trained somebody that big?" And I said, "I haven't trained 600. I've trained a few 400-pounders." He's like, "Dude, what do you do?" He's like, honestly, like, the workout is, I get a chair, and they hold my hands, and they sit down, get up, and we do that for like 20 minutes, and they're like pretty much done. And then they have to take a break between walking from the gym floor over to signing out or whatever. So, and a mistake that you would make would be like boot camp, right. Biggest Loser style. Like, that's why I hate that show so much. It's like, you're setting those people up for
pounding on people. It's unsustainable.
Yeah. Anybody can lock themselves in a camp and discipline themselves for a short period of time. But again, once that high of emotion and that cheerleader yelling at you and the peer pressure of everybody around you, once that all goes away and it's just you with you.
What do you got?
Yeah. What do you got? You don't got all that stuff anymore. And the only thing you can lean on is the discipline and behaviors that you've implemented in your life. And you'd be a fool to commit to yourself to all of these things at once if you've never really done that. So I would say, start with that. If you're somebody who only walks 1,000 steps in a day, which I love to tell somebody, I think here's where I do like tech, right? I love.
So I'm gonna place you.
Yeah, I love like step counters, like whether it be your Apple iPhone or a Fitbit or whatever like that. But what I like them for is not like something that we're married to or matters that much, but it's a good place for me to know as a coach, like your starting point.
There's awareness.
Yeah, so exactly. For awareness reasons. Like, I'll have somebody wear one of those for a week and I say, just do your normal stuff. Don't try to impress me and just get back to me. See what happens. And then come back and I go like, okay, so I can look at her all week. She averages 2,500 steps a day. So I'm going to tell her, like, here's our goal. I want you to get to 4,000 steps every day, which I know 2,000 steps is like 20-minute walk. That's it, right? So what I want you to do is do a 20-minute walk. We'll agree on a time when you have I don't want to implement it at a time that's going to get conflicted all the time. Like, do you have dinner with your husband at night? Okay, great. Well, here's a winning recipe for you. I want you and your husband to go for a walk for 20 minutes after you eat.
Right after you eat, yep.
And what you'll love about this, and what I want you to connect to this, is not about how much weight you're going to lose next week or that, is this is a great time for you and your husband to talk.
Decompress.
That's right. Have conversation, connect, work on your relationship health, and maybe your spiritual health around that time.
Kind of like a habit stacking, right?
That's right.
Working on more than one thing at one time.
And you start to do that, and then let's talk about the benefit, and then we'll build upon that. So if you're getting back right now, I'll tell you that the biggest mistake that most people make is to overcommit themselves to something they can't realistically stick to forever. So start with something small, build some momentum, and then start to habit stack, start to stack little things on top of that. And this is the long game, man. This is not a quick fix thing. And even if you think you want that because you have a wedding or you have something coming up really quick, if you really want long-term results forever, then this is the approach to do that. You don't want to cram it all at once.
That's great advice, man. Much gratitude for all your knowledge and for hanging out with me today.
Thank you, dude.
And spending time. I really just want to thank you one more time. And give you an opportunity to, with all the things we've talked about. I mean, obviously, the Mind Pump podcast is a great place to learn more about Adam, but if people are going to jump on and try to follow and maybe know a little bit more about you, where do they go, dude?
I mean, you can find us anywhere, right? I always tell people to please take advantage of all the free content that we have first. We have 2 big old YouTube channels under Mind Pump. We've got the podcast, Mind Pump. We have mindpumpfree.com, which has got all kinds of free content in. We have the blogs. Go consume all the free stuff from us. If you're going to support in any way right now, the one thing I might ask is to go over to the resistancetrainingrevolution.com. Pick up Sal's book. Sal does and this book, so you know, is really targeted to the person you just asked me about. So when he wrote that book, it was not to compete with all the other
Arnold's Encyclopedia.
Yes, it is not designed to get and not that it won't add value to someone who's like a fitness fanatic or like that. It's really to communicate fitness the right way to the masses, and to really help people start in the right direction. So if you have a family or a friend or somebody who you know would benefit from that, it's an incredible book, and I know he's releasing it real soon here.
Yeah, I've got it pre-purchased it, sitting in the library.
Yeah, man, thank you.
Well, again, man, thanks again for coming down. Always a really great time. Hopefully we can have you back in here. Miss talking to you, miss seeing you, bud.
Yeah, of course. You too.
Say hi to the crew for us, and
I will.
We'll catch you next time.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Iron Sights. If you enjoyed our conversation, you can support our mission by hitting the subscribe button, leaving a review, and sharing the podcast with a friend. I'll see you on the next episode.